The council chamber was silent except for the low hum of the energy fields that kept the massive structure afloat in space. Stars blinked far beyond the transparent walls, cold and indifferent to the terror unfolding inside. The Galactic Council, a group of beings who ruled countless star systems, sat in perfect order, their eyes fixed on a single screen. On it, a live feed showed a small human settlement on a distant, peaceful planet, far from the reaches of war and politics. None of the council members seemed to care for the lives of the people on that planet. But one life, in particular, had caught their attention. A young human girl whose presence now dictated the fate of their cruel ritual. She had been taken in secret, her terrified eyes wide as the council's representatives studied her through the surveillance feed. She was not just any girl. Her defiance, her sharp gaze, and the silent strength she radiated unsettled even the most hardened of council members. For some reason, she did not cry, did not beg. She simply looked at them, unbroken, and that small, quiet rebellion sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The council had called a private meeting to decide her fate, though the decision had been clear to them for months. This human child was to be offered to the council's dragon, a creature as old as the stars themselves, monstrous in size, with scales harder than the strongest alloys and teeth sharper than any blade known to man or alien. They called it the Savage Dragon. It was their ultimate enforcer, the beast that ensured loyalty through fear and obedience through terror. The dragon had never harmed a council member, but its temper was unpredictable. It would devour the girl without hesitation if provoked or even slightly displeased. Yet they felt no fear, only excitement. This ritual was both a display of power and a reminder of their control over life and death. And now, watching the girl stand in the holding chamber on that distant planet, they could feel the thrill building in their alien hearts. Far away, the girl, named Lyra, crouched in the dim light of her cell, her hands gripping the edges of the cold metal floor. The air smelled faintly of burning fuel and something sweet, almost sickly, that she could not identify. Her mind raced, trying to piece together how she had ended up here. One moment she had been exploring the forest on the edge of her village, chasing the soft glow of fireflies, and the next, she had been pulled from the ground by beings she had never seen before. They had spoken no words she understood, only strange clicks and sounds, but the intention had been clear. Take her. Now she was trapped, alone, surrounded by walls that shimmered with alien energy, waiting for a fate she could not imagine. Her fear was sharp and raw, but beneath it, a spark of something else. A stubborn, unyielding courage that refused to be snuffed out. She refused to scream. She refused to show weakness. The chamber on the council ship shifted slightly, the massive doors sliding open to reveal the dragon's lair. The creature lay coiled in the center, its enormous body blocking the view of anything beyond it. Its scales glimmered like molten metal under the artificial lights, and its eyes, molten gold and burning with intelligence, turned slowly toward the council as if sensing the excitement in the room. The dragon's long, jagged tail lashed back and forth with anticipation, sending vibrations through the floor. Even the council members, who had spent decades mastering politics and strategy, felt a shiver run down their spines. Some of them clasped their clawed hands together, muttering under their breaths, while others simply stared, expressionless, enjoying the cold thrill of the power they wielded. The ritual had begun, and the girl's life was the key to it. Lyra heard the first distant roar as the dragon stirred, a sound that made the air itself tremble. It was not a simple growl or hiss, but a deep, resonant force that seemed to echo through her chest. She could feel it even through the energy barrier of her cell. Her heart hammered, yet she refused to kneel or cry out. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms, and whispered silently to herself, "I will not give them this." But even as she made her silent vow, her mind raced for a way out. She was alone, yes, but humans were clever. Humans could adapt. Somewhere, someone would come for her, though she could not know when. Until then, she had only herself. Back in the council chamber, one of the senior members, a tall being with translucent skin and eyes like liquid silver, raised a long, spindly arm. "Bring her in," it commanded in a voice that resonated across the room. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of death. Another member, shorter and bulkier, nodded, sending signals to the transport team. Across the stars, Lyra's cell shimmered and dissolved into a vortex of light, and she felt herself being lifted, weightless, pulled through space at a speed that made her stomach lurch. She tried to focus on something, anything familiar, the stars, the planets, the fireflies, but everything moved too fast. The transport ended abruptly, and she fell onto a solid surface. She looked up and saw the dragon for the first time. It was larger than anything she had ever imagined. Its head alone could have swallowed a small ship. Its wings stretched wide, covered in jagged edges like broken glass. Its eyes locked onto hers, intelligent and calculating, and she realized that this creature was not merely a beast. It was aware, it was thinking, and it had already decided that she was prey. She wanted to scream, but her throat refused. The council stood behind her, faces calm and cruel, as if watching a theater performance. "Do not harm her before the ritual begins," one of them instructed. The dragon moved, slowly circling her, each step shaking the ground. Its massive claws left gouges in the metal floor. Lyra backed away instinctively, though she knew there was nowhere to hide. She noticed the council's expressions, some of them smiling, others tense. They had seen this before, perhaps hundreds of times, and yet each time, there was an air of nervous anticipation, a thrill in watching life and death dance so closely together. She realized she was more than a ritual. She was a symbol. She was a message, a warning to humans everywhere, though the council could not yet know the extent of human response. Time stretched, each second heavy with fear and expectation. Lyra kept her eyes on the dragon, trying to anticipate its movements. She noticed the slight twitch in its tail, the way its nostrils flared, the subtle shift of its massive wings. Every tiny movement was a signal of the danger she faced, and she read them like a map. The council's commands came next, motions, gestures, clicks, and the dragon responded. It was as if it understood not just their words but their intent. Lyra realized then that brute strength alone would not save her. She would need cunning, timing, and perhaps a bit of luck to survive. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. An alarm blared, an unusual sound that even the council did not expect. Lyra stumbled but caught herself, her heart leaping. Outside, she could see flashes of light. Not from the dragon, not from the council, but from something moving fast, something approaching. Humans. She could not believe her eyes, yet deep inside, she recognized the truth. Humans never left one of their own behind, no matter the distance, no matter the danger. The council had assumed this girl was alone, defenseless. They had underestimated her species. The dragon reared its massive head, sensing the disturbance. Its roar filled the chamber, shaking panels loose and sending sparks into the air. The council's calm was shattered, replaced by frantic orders and urgent commands. Lyra saw an opportunity. Her legs, weak with fear but strong with determination, carried her toward a side exit she had noticed during transport. The council members tried to stop her, but their attention was divided, and the dragon, confused by the sudden flashes and movements outside, hesitated. Every second counted, and Lyra ran, feeling the heat of the dragon's breath on her back. As she moved, she understood something vital. Survival was not about being strong or fearless. It was about being smart, about noticing the smallest details, about exploiting the slightest mistake. The council had made one, a fatal one. They had assumed she was just a human girl, fragile and weak. They had assumed she would cry, beg, or break under the weight of terror. They had assumed they were in control. And now, with the distant flashes of approaching rescue, those assumptions were about to crumble. The chamber erupted in chaos. The dragon's roar grew louder, more agitated, as it tried to follow her. Council members screamed in alien tongues, their gestures frantic. Sparks flew from control panels, and alarms blared endlessly. Lyra's mind raced, every instinct screaming at her to keep moving, to survive. She did not look back, did not falter. Somewhere, beyond the chamber, beyond the dragon, she could feel the presence of her people, the humans coming to reclaim one of their own. And in that moment, fear transformed into something sharper, something brighter. Hope. Even as the council tried to regain control, even as the dragon lunged and twisted its massive body, Lyra pressed forward. Her small hands found grips, her feet carried her over obstacles, and her eyes, wide and unblinking, searched for the light of freedom. She knew the council would not forgive this, that their wrath would be terrible, and that the dragon was far from defeated. But she also knew something humans did not give up. They did not surrender. They fought. And now, for the first time, the council would witness the beginning of a human reckoning. The signal of horror, the girl's capture, the council's cruelty, the dragon's wrath, had been sent. But an answer was on its way, and it would be unlike anything the council could ever imagine. The air in the council chamber vibrated with chaos. The alarms blared, echoing through the massive halls, while sparks rained from damaged control panels. The dragon's roar shook the floor, each thundering step sending shivers through the walls. Lyra ran, her small body darting through the labyrinth of metal corridors, each corner more dangerous than the last. She could feel the dragon's presence behind her, its heat brushing against the walls, the weight of its massive claws leaving deep grooves in the floor. She did not dare look back, but every instinct told her it was close, watching, calculating. She pressed herself into shadows, sliding behind massive support beams, hiding in niches carved into the walls, holding her breath as the dragon's massive head passed by, nostrils flaring, eyes burning like molten gold. Every moment was life or death, and she knew even a second of hesitation could end everything. The council members, frantic and shouting in their alien tongues, tried to regain control of the beast. Commands flickered across the glowing panels, signaling orders the dragon ignored. It had never encountered this level of chaos. The sudden flashes from outside the chamber, the unexpected movement, had unsettled it. Its massive wings beat the air, sending gusts that tore through corridors, scattering debris. Lyra clung to the wall as the air roared past her, dust stinging her eyes, and the heat brushing her hair. Her mind raced, piecing together what little she had learned about dragons from the rare stories whispered in human history. They were cunning as well as brutal, and she had to stay 2 steps ahead to survive. Her small size was an advantage. She could slip through narrow spaces the dragon could not reach. She reminded herself of this as she pressed on, heart pounding, sweat stinging her eyes, but determination sharper than fear pushing her forward. Outside the chamber, beyond the walls of the council's massive ship, a small human fleet had arrived. They had intercepted signals from spies and scouts, pieces of encrypted messages that hinted at the council's ritual. The humans had come knowing the danger, knowing they could lose ships, crews, and perhaps even the girl. But they had come anyway. Their ships moved with silent precision through the void, cloaked in shadow, avoiding patrols that could alert the council. On board one vessel, Captain Eric watched the screens, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. "She's alive," he muttered, voice low but steady. "We're too late for prevention, but not too late for rescue." His crew moved with practiced speed, preparing weapons, shields, and escape pods. Every second counted. The council had underestimated humans, and now that mistake would cost them dearly. Back inside, Lyra found herself in a vast atrium, the ceilings disappearing into darkness above, the floor covered in a network of glowing energy grids. The dragon had entered moments before, its massive form uncoiling, eyes scanning, tail lashing dangerously. She froze, calculating the distance between the nearest exit and the massive beast. One wrong move and she would be torn apart. She noticed a control panel low and within reach of her small hands. If she could manage it, she might be able to open a secondary door or trigger some distraction. The panel hummed under her touch, and her fingers moved quickly, pressing buttons at random but careful enough to avoid triggering an alarm directly. Lights flickered, doors hissed open in the distance, and the dragon's attention shifted, head turning slowly toward the disturbance. The council screamed, their panic rising. "Do not touch that!" one of them shouted, arms flailing. But the dragon had already noticed the movement. It let out a roar, a sound that vibrated through the atrium like a rolling storm. Lyra crouched, pressing herself into a corner, watching its massive head move with terrifying intelligence. The dragon sniffed, nostrils flaring, smoke curling from its jaws. Its claws raked the floor, sending sparks from the energy grid into the air. The heat was intense, and Lyra could feel the soles of her shoes burning against the floor. She forced herself to remain calm. Panic would not save her. Only action, only clever moves could. A sudden vibration ran through the floor. The human fleet outside had begun their first strike, not at the council members directly, but at the external power conduits feeding energy to the dragon's containment systems. Explosions rocked the ship, alarms screamed, and the council's control panels went dark. The dragon tilted its massive head, sensing the disruption, uncertainty flickering in its golden eyes. Lyra saw her chance. She sprinted toward one of the open doors, using the confusion as cover. The air smelled of ozone and burning circuits, and the floor trembled beneath each of her steps. She kept moving, crouching low when the dragon's shadow swept over her, darting across the atrium with the agility of someone who had run from fear all her life. The council was in chaos. Members shouted and gestured wildly, their carefully planned control over the dragon unraveling in minutes. Some tried to calm it, some tried to attack it, but the beast ignored most of them, focused on the girl, driven by both instinct and frustration at the sudden disruption. Sparks flew from the ceiling as the dragon lashed its tail, smashing consoles and sending council members stumbling. One screamed, slipping into the path of a falling panel, narrowly saved by another member. But Lyra did not notice any of them. She was focused on survival, on escape, and on staying ahead of a creature that could end her life with one swipe. She reached the edge of the atrium, seeing a narrow maintenance corridor just large enough for her to squeeze through. She didn't hesitate. She darted into the passage, heart hammering, ears ringing from the dragon's roar behind her. The corridors twisted and turned, dark and silent except for the occasional rumble as the dragon followed, careful not to lose her trail. Lyra moved quickly, memorizing every turn, every shadow, using the ship's structure to her advantage. Every moment was tense. Every second counted. She could feel the dragon's hot breath vibrating through the walls, but she pressed on, her mind sharp, her body ready for anything. Outside, the human fleet struck again. Small craft, fast and silent, pierced the council ship's defenses, striking energy cores, disabling sections of the vessel, and creating new distractions. The council members realized too late that their control had been broken. Their dragon, once the perfect weapon, now moved unpredictably, frustrated and dangerous even to them. And somewhere in the chaos, a human girl was moving, surviving, and turning the council's perfect plan into a nightmare. Lyra found herself in another chamber, this one filled with strange machinery she did not recognize. Panels glowed, cables snaked across the floor, and the faint sound of fluid pumping echoed through the room. She pressed herself into a corner, listening. The dragon's roar came again, closer now, a wave of heat and sound that made her knees shake. But she was ready. She spotted a small conduit, just big enough to climb through. Her fingers gripped the edges, and she began to climb, muscles straining, adrenaline surging through her veins. Behind her, the dragon smashed through the chamber, claws raking metal, flames sparking from its mouth. Sparks hit the walls near her, showering her with light and heat, but she did not falter. One step, another step, and she squeezed into the narrow conduit. The humans outside coordinated their next strike, timing it with the dragon's pursuit. Explosions rocked the ship as they targeted structural supports, creating new hazards for the council and the dragon alike. Lyra crawled through the conduit, her small body moving swiftly, narrowly avoiding falling debris. She could hear the dragon's roar behind her, hear the council shouting in panic, but she pressed on. She knew humans were coming. She knew she was not alone. The thought gave her courage, pushing her forward when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Finally, She emerged in a dimly lit corridor far from the atrium. The dragon's roar echoed in the distance, and the council's frantic voices faded slightly. Lyra paused, chest heaving, sweat dripping from her brow, and allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. But she knew the danger was far from over. The dragon was still alive, the council still powerful, and the path to freedom still treacherous. She looked ahead, seeing the faint glow of an external door, and realized that beyond it lay open space, and perhaps salvation. But the journey was not simple, and the dragon would not let her leave so easily. Every step from here would test her courage, her wit, and her humanity. The signal of human resilience had already begun. The council had underestimated them. The dragon had underestimated her. And as Lyra pressed forward, determination burning in her eyes, she knew that the coming battle would be more than just survival. It would be a reckoning. Humans never surrendered. Humans never gave up. And now, the council and the dragon would learn that lesson the hard way. The council's chamber was a place of order, but now it was chaos incarnate. Alarms screamed without pause, sparks flew from shattered consoles, and the massive dragon tore through the halls with unrestrained fury. Lyra had slipped through narrow passages, and the humans outside had begun their coordinated assault, striking at the ship's energy cores, disabling the council's defenses. The council had expected obedience from their dragon, and now they faced rebellion from every side. The girl, the humans, and even their own creature. Panic ran through the ranks. They gestured wildly, voices shrieking in alien tones. But their commands had little effect. The dragon, confused and enraged, lashed out indiscriminately, smashing walls, sending debris flying, its golden eyes scanning for the girl who had dared to defy its might. Lyra pressed herself into a shadowed corner, barely breathing, listening as the roar behind her faded slightly. The humans were close. She could feel it. On board the human flagship, Captain Eric's face was tense, eyes scanning every feed from the smaller vessels moving in synchrony. They had planned this carefully. Strike the council's external power systems, distract the dragon, and create an opening for the girl. Every second of hesitation could cost lives, and he knew it. Prepare the boarding pods, he ordered, voice steady despite the chaos around him. We move the moment she's in reach. No mistakes. We bring her home. His crew responded with disciplined precision, the hum of energy shields, thrusters, and weapons filling the command deck. Though the council had underestimated humanity, Eric had never underestimated the dragon. It would be their biggest challenge yet, but humans had a quality the council could never predict: adaptability. And adaptability often meant survival. Inside the council ship, Lyra crept through dim corridors, following the faint glow that led to the external doors. Each step was deliberate, careful, calculated. The dragon's presence loomed behind her, but she had learned to read its movements, to anticipate its strikes, and to use the ship's architecture to her advantage. Narrow passages, corners, low ceilings. These became her allies, limiting the dragon's ability to strike. She paused for a moment, pressing her back to the cold wall, listening to the heavy rumble of its breath. Sparks fell from the ceiling above, and a faint crackle of energy warned her of unstable conduits nearby. She adjusted her path, ducking under a metal beam, and crawled through a maintenance hatch that led to a side corridor. Every second was a gamble, but she understood something vital. The dragon was dangerous, yes, but her cleverness and speed gave her a chance. And the humans were coming to make that chance real. The council's panic increased as their control weakened. Some tried to stabilize the dragon with energy restraints, beams of force designed to bind its massive limbs, but the attacks from the human fleet outside destabilized their systems. Energy flickered and died, restraints weakened, and the dragon sensed freedom. Its roar echoed through the halls, reverberating in the walls, shaking consoles loose. One member of the council, a tall, thin being with eyes like liquid silver, banged a clawed hand against a console, shouting orders that came too late. The dragon twisted its massive body, smashing pillars and walls in its fury. Chaos reigned, but in that chaos lay opportunity. Lyra pressed forward, moving faster now, her heart hammering with anticipation and fear. Freedom was close, and she could almost feel the pull of open space ahead. Suddenly, she reached a wide chamber with multiple exit points, each one glowing faintly with external energy. She paused, scanning for the safest route. Her gaze fell on a small docking bay that connected directly to the human fleet's approach corridor. It was risky, exposed, but it offered the quickest escape. Her instincts told her this was the path she needed. She sprinted, running across the floor, dodging jagged metal falling from above, her mind calculating every step. Sparks flew around her. The dragon's roar grew closer, louder, each step of its claws echoing like rolling thunder. She knew the council could strike at her at any moment. Every second counted, and in those seconds she was determined to survive. Outside, the human boarding pods approached. They moved silently, hugging the ship's surface, avoiding patrol drones that could detect them. The pilots were skilled, aware of the dangers but confident in their strategy. They had not come to fight the dragon, they had come to extract the girl. Their weapons were ready for the council's forces, their shields strong enough to withstand sudden attacks. The moment Lyra appeared, they would act. Timing was everything. Captain Eric watched the feed, his eyes narrowed, waiting for the signal. "Hold," he whispered. "Wait for her. We strike when she's within range." The crew obeyed, every second stretching with tension. Lyra reached the docking bay and paused at the threshold, taking in the sight before her. The vastness of space lay beyond the transparent panels, and small lights flickered. The approach of the human pods, her hope and salvation shining in the darkness. She could see the first pod slipping along the hull, moving toward her position with careful precision. But she did not move yet. She needed to be precise. One misstep, one moment of hesitation, and the dragon's strike could end her life instantly. She crouched low, assessing the dragon's position through the chamber, watching its massive head twist and turn, searching. Then, she saw it. A moment of distraction. The council, in their panic, had activated a secondary energy beam, which sparked and flared, drawing the dragon's attention for just enough time. She bolted, sprinting across the docking bay floor, heart racing, lungs burning. The dragon followed, claws tearing into the metal floor, flames licking at the walls, and sparks flying in every direction. Lyra dove into the pod as the boarding crew extended their grappling hooks, pulling it into the safety of their ship. The dragon's massive head slammed against the docking bay wall as the pod accelerated away, shaking violently but intact. Lyra pressed herself into the floor, gasping for breath, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She looked up, seeing the human faces around her, calm and determined, and realized she had survived the first wave of terror. Inside the pod, Captain Eric's voice came through the comms. "Welcome aboard, Lyra. You're safe now." She nodded, barely able to speak, her mind still racing from the close escape. She could hear the dragon roaring behind them, smashing against the outer hull, but she felt a spark of triumph. She had survived. The humans had come, and the council's plan was unraveling faster than they could imagine. The council watched in disbelief as the pod disappeared into space, carrying the girl they had thought helpless. Their dragon roared in frustration, thrashing in the chamber, sending walls and pillars crashing down. They had underestimated the humans, underestimated the courage and cunning of a single human girl. Their perfect ritual had been shattered, and their control slipping away. Panic replaced calm, and fear replaced confidence. Every plan they had made now seemed fragile, brittle under the chaos that humans and their own dragon had unleashed. Lyra looked out of the pod's viewport, the vast darkness of space stretching infinitely before her. The council's ship was still powerful, but its systems were failing, weakened by the human assault. Sparks and explosions lit its surface, the dragon thrashing inside. For a moment, Lyra allowed herself to feel relief, a quiet smile touching her lips. She had survived. She had outsmarted a dragon, outmaneuvered a council, and now she was on her way to safety. But she knew the battle was not over. The council would not forgive her, the dragon would not forget, and the war between humans and the Galactic Council had only just begun. In the distance, other human ships approached, their engines glowing faintly against the blackness. Captain Eric's fleet coordinated a perimeter, preparing for the next phase of the operation. Lyra sat, catching her breath, listening to the hum of the pod and the faint calm chatter. She realized something important. She was not just a girl who had survived. She had become a symbol of human courage, a spark that could ignite resistance across the stars. The Council may have thought her powerless, but she had shown them the opposite. Humans were clever, resourceful, and relentless, and now they would make their presence known in ways the Council could not yet imagine. The dragon roared again, its fury echoing through the remaining chambers of the Council ship, but Lyra did not flinch. She had survived the worst, and the humans were with her. Together, they would turn fear into strength, chaos into opportunity, and survival into triumph. This was just the beginning, and Lyra knew, deep inside, that the coming chapters would be even more dangerous, more thrilling, and more decisive. The Council had made a grave mistake in underestimating humans. They had made an enemy, and that enemy was about to fight back. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the harness inside the human pod, but her eyes burned with focus. She had survived the Council's dragon once, and she was determined not to falter again. Outside the viewport, the Council ship loomed like a fortress of steel and fire, flames licking the surface where the humans had struck. The dragon's massive silhouette moved violently within, thrashing through corridors and smashing walls. Its roar echoed into space, a sound that could paralyze even the bravest of creatures. But Lyra felt no fear. She had learned quickly that fear was a tool, something to channel into careful movement and sharp thinking. And now, with the humans around her, she felt a growing surge of hope, one that strengthened her resolve. The human fleet moved like a shadow across the stars, coordinated and precise. Small attack craft zipped around the Council ship, disabling its shields and targeting key energy nodes. Larger vessels fired energy pulses that ripped through the outer hull, forcing the Council members to divide their attention. Captain Eric's voice was calm but firm over the comms. "We cut their power grid. Move to internal breach points. Lyra, stay low. We're coming for you." Lyra's pulse quickened. This was it. The humans were going inside the Council ship. She had survived their first defense, but now it was time to strike back and turn the tide. Every second was vital, every move a calculation of life and death. The pod docked silently on the edge of the damaged Council ship. Lyra's small frame slipped through the airlock, her feet landing lightly on the floor as the pod pulled away. Around her, humans in sleek suits moved with quiet precision, weapons ready, scanning corridors for Council forces or the dragon. Lyra followed, her nerves sharp but steady. She had learned how to read danger, how to anticipate the dragon's unpredictable movements, and she shared what she knew with the humans. Every shadow, every corner, every flicker of movement became a warning, and every step they took was guided by the combination of human discipline and her instinctive knowledge of the Council's inner layout. The Council was in complete disarray. Their dragon, once a symbol of perfect control, had become a wild force inside their own ship. It smashed through walls, toppled consoles, and turned corridors into rubble. Some Council members tried to maintain control through remote systems, activating energy beams, traps, or restraint fields, but the humans' attack had disabled most of their power grids. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the smell of scorched metal filled the chambers. One Council member, short and muscular with cracked scales along its arm, shouted frantically, "Contain it! Now!" But containment was no longer possible. The dragon's fury was unleashed, and its anger now included frustration at the humans daring to intervene. Lyra and the humans moved deeper into the Council ship, navigating corridors fractured by the dragon's rampage. She pointed to weakened walls and unstable flooring, guiding the team past danger. They advanced carefully, relying on silence and precision. The dragon's roar echoed through the halls intermittently, each sound a reminder of how close death always was. At one point, a massive claw smashed through a nearby wall, sending debris crashing down. Lyra and the humans barely had time to dive aside, sparks sizzling against the walls around them. But they pressed on. There was no turning back. In a control chamber above them, the council scrambled to regain order. Panels sparked, energy flickered, and tension rose. Some members began to turn on each other, blaming failures for the disaster. "It is the girl. She has upset the balance," one screeched. Another, with translucent skin and long spindly fingers, countered, "Our dragon obeys. We need to maintain control." Their voices overlapped, but it was too late. Their perfect plan had collapsed. A single human girl had exposed the cracks in their empire, and the humans outside had delivered the final blow. Lyra led the team toward the central chamber, the heart of the council ship. It was here, she remembered, where the dragon's energy core was connected to the main systems, a place that could turn the tide entirely if controlled. The humans exchanged glances, nodding at her guidance. Their weapons were ready, but it was not brute force that would win this battle. It was intelligence, timing, and courage. Lyra's knowledge of the ship, combined with the human skill, created a perfect storm of strategy against the council and their beast. Suddenly, the dragon emerged into the corridor ahead, massive wings stretched wide, scales glinting in the dim light. It had noticed them. Its eyes, golden and intelligent, locked onto Lyra. It roared, a sound that shook the floor, and advanced with terrifying speed. The humans took cover, firing at energy nodes and creating distractions, but Lyra knew they needed more than distraction. They needed control. She remembered the patterns of the energy grids and the weak points in the structural supports. With a sharp gesture, she signaled the team. They split, forcing the dragon to move and exposing a critical access point to its internal energy lines. The dragon hesitated, sensing the threat, but curiosity and anger drove it forward. Lyra's heart pounded. She sprinted toward the exposed conduit, gripping the controls humans had prepared for her. Sparks flew as the dragon lashed its tail, knocking over panels and sending walls crashing. The humans provided covering fire, striking precise targets to keep the council members distracted. Lyra's fingers moved rapidly across the controls, rerouting power, creating feedback loops, and triggering systems the council had not expected the dragon itself to interact with. The creature roared again, confused and furious. As alarms blared, systems overloaded, and the lights flickered. Chaos reigned, but it was chaos Lyra and the humans had learned to navigate. They pressed on, every step deliberate, every movement a calculated risk. The council members shouted and gestured desperately, trying to regain control of their dragon, but their commands were now meaningless. The beast's fury was untethered, their authority slipping away like sand through their fingers. Lyra felt a surge of triumph, knowing that she and the humans had turned the tide. This was no longer just survival, it was retaliation. The central chamber approached, and with it, the critical control panel. Lyra reached it, crouching behind a console, her fingers already adjusting the settings, initiating a system shutdown that would disable key energy lines feeding the dragon. Sparks flew as overload warnings flashed across the panels, alarms shrieking with fury. The dragon roared, sensing the disruption, twisting and snapping its massive jaws at the humans around it. But the team worked as one, coordinated, focused, following Lyra's guidance. Every second counted, every fraction of movement a difference between success and death. Finally, the system began to respond. The dragon's movements slowed, its fury trapped within the feedback loops of its own energy. The council members froze, realizing too late what had happened. Their perfect enforcer was now at their mercy, not in submission, but incapacitated by the cleverness of a human girl and her allies. Lyra exhaled, feeling a sharp but brief relief. The danger was not over, the council was still alive, and the dragon could recover if not fully contained. But they had achieved something monumental. They had struck back. They had disrupted the council's power. And most importantly, they had survived. Lyra looked at the humans around her, their faces focused but tired. "We've done it," she whispered, not aloud but to herself. It was a quiet victory, small yet significant. The dragon was contained for now, the council was reeling, and the path forward, though still dangerous, was open. Outside, the human fleet continued their assault, ensuring the council could not regroup quickly. Every system disabled, every control lost was a step closer to total victory. As she moved through the central chamber with the team, Lyra realized something important. This battle was more than survival or revenge. It was a statement. Humans were not weak. Humans were clever, resourceful, and brave. The council had treated her as a helpless child, a tool to appease their dragon, but she had proven them wrong. And now, as they prepared to push further, the humans would show the council just how unstoppable they could be. The dragon roared one last time, trapped for now, flames licking the ceiling, eyes full of rage. Lyra pressed herself low, heart pounding, but she smiled faintly. They had survived, they had fought back, and they had made a mark. The council would not forget, and neither would the dragon. But the humans, clever, relentless, and united, were ready for whatever came next. And Lyra, small but unbroken, was at the center of it all. The council ship groaned under the weight of destruction. Sparks showered from broken panels, fires raged in the corridors, and alarms screamed relentlessly, echoing across the massive halls. The dragon, though temporarily contained, roared in fury, thrashing against the energy restraints that now held it in place. Each movement sent vibrations through the floor, shaking loose debris and threatening to crush anything in its path. Lyra crouched low behind a reinforced console, heart hammering, eyes sharp, watching the beast's every twitch. She knew it was only a matter of time before it tried something unpredictable, something lethal. The humans around her moved like shadows, coordinated, silent, following her instructions, trusting her instincts to navigate the labyrinthine corridors. This was no longer just survival, it was a battle, and every decision could tip the scales. Captain Eric's voice came through the comms, calm but urgent. Lyra, we need full control of the central systems. That dragon will not stay contained for long. Prepare for direct interface. Lyra nodded, though he could not see it. She had already located the main control console, the one that regulated the dragon's restraints and the ship's energy distribution. With the humans providing cover, she approached it, each step measured, careful to avoid loose debris and sparks. The dragon's eyes followed her every move, burning with intelligence and rage, smoke curling from its nostrils. It was aware of what she was doing, aware of the threat she posed. But she had learned something critical. It was a creature of habit and pattern. Predictable in some ways, deadly in others, but predictable enough to outsmart if one moved quickly and decisively. The council members panicked as their plans crumbled. They gestured furiously at panels, their voices overlapping in frantic shouts. "Contain the breach," one screamed. "Stabilize the dragon's energy. Now!" Another yelled. Their commands went unheeded. The humans outside had crippled their systems, and inside, the creature they had once controlled was now a wild, furious force, reacting to chaos rather than commands. Lyra could hear the council members' fear, a sound sharper than the dragon's roar, more unsettling because it came from beings who had never felt powerless. And in that fear lay opportunity. Opportunity to strike, to disrupt, to survive, and to claim victory. Lyra reached the console, hands trembling slightly but steady. Sparks hissed nearby, and the dragon's massive tail thrashed against the wall, sending panels flying. She pressed buttons quickly, rerouting energy flows, initiating feedback loops, and triggering automated locks to strengthen the restraints. Her mind raced, calculating risks, predicting consequences. Each action she took altered the dragon's movements, keeping it reactive rather than offensive. The humans provided suppressing fire, targeting council members who tried to interfere or regain control. The corridors shook with explosions, the smell of scorched metal thick in the air, and yet Lyra moved with precision. Her fear had sharpened into clarity. Every second she survived was a second closer to victory. Suddenly, the dragon lashed with surprising speed, tearing a massive hole through a corridor wall. Sparks and debris flew toward Lyra, but she rolled instinctively, landing behind a protective barrier. The humans fired at the dragon's limbs, creating diversions and forcing it to shift focus. Lyra seized the moment, typing commands into the console, rerouting power to a critical section of the ship. Energy surged, and a feedback pulse ran along the dragon's restraints. It roared, twisting violently, its wings smashing into the ceiling, sending more debris crashing down. But the feedback worked. The beast slowed, caught in a controlled trap of its own energy, wild fury restrained by Lyra's quick thinking. The council's panic escalated. Members clawed at consoles, their faces pale with fear. The girl is controlling it. How is this possible? One screeched, stumbling backward as the floor beneath him shook. Another banged on a panel, sparks erupting from his fingertips. Their control had crumbled completely. They had assumed the humans were a minor nuisance, that a single girl could never disrupt their plans, that the dragon's obedience was absolute. Every assumption had been wrong. Lyra felt a sharp sense of triumph, but she knew the battle was not yet over. The dragon was restrained temporarily, the council was confused, but they still had power, and they would retaliate. She had to act decisively. Ready the extraction pods, she instructed the humans. We're moving to the council core. That's where we end this. The team moved as one, swift and disciplined, navigating through fractured corridors. The dragon's roars echoed behind them, each one more violent, more desperate. Lyra's hands gripped her weapon, though she did not intend to use it for brute force. Strategy, speed, and the humans' coordination would be the key to victory. She led them through narrow passages, using shadows, broken walls, and debris to their advantage. Every step brought them closer to the council core, and closer to the moment when they would finally turn the tide. The council core was a massive chamber, filled with glowing panels and energy conduits. At its center stood the council's high chair, where the leaders once exuded confidence and power. Now they were scattered, panicked, shouting useless commands at systems that no longer obeyed them. Lyra's heart pounded as she approached, realizing that this moment would define everything. The humans positioned themselves strategically, covering entrances, ready to intercept council members who tried to escape or interfere. Lyra's fingers flew over the control panel, initiating lockdowns, redirecting power, and triggering the fail-safe systems the council had relied upon for centuries. Sparks flared, alarms screamed, and the dragon's roar echoed faintly through the reinforced walls. Still furious, still dangerous, but contained. One council member, the tallest among them, stepped forward, voice trembling. "Stop her! She cannot control the dragon!" he shouted, gesturing wildly at the console. Lyra ignored him, her focus absolute. Her actions were precise, calculated, and unstoppable. The lockdown initiated. Energy conduits hummed, pulsing with controlled force. Doors slammed shut, sealing key sections of the ship. The dragon roared again, its massive head twisting as it struggled, but the feedback loops kept it contained. The council's authority crumbled before them. Their perfect plan, their ritual, their empire's symbol of control, the dragon, was now neutralized by a human girl and her allies. The humans moved in, securing the council members. Some resisted, but the humans' discipline and numbers were overwhelming. Lyra felt a sharp satisfaction as she watched them captured, powerless, their reign disrupted. Sparks hissed and smoke rose as the chamber settled into chaos. And yet through it all, Lyra felt a strange calm. The dragon, though still massive and dangerous, was subdued. The council, though still alive, had lost all control. And she had survived, led, and turned the tide. But Lyra knew the battle was not truly over. The dragon's intelligence was formidable, and the council's influence reached beyond this ship. The war had only begun. Still, for now, victory was theirs. The humans secured the council members, the dragon was contained, and the ship lay in partial ruin. Lyra exhaled, feeling relief, exhaustion, and pride all at once. She had survived impossible odds, outsmarted a creature of legend, and faced the full might of a galactic empire, and won. As she looked out at the stars through the shattered viewport, Lyra realized the truth. Humanity was no longer just a passive player in the galaxy. They were a force, clever, relentless, and unyielding. And she, a single human girl once captured as prey, had become a symbol of their strength, courage, and cunning. The Council may have underestimated humans, but they would never make that mistake again. The Council ship burned from within, corridors twisted and shattered, alarms screaming across every deck. Lyra stood at the edge of the central chamber, her small frame illuminated by the flickering lights, shadows dancing across her determined face. The humans behind her moved like shadows, disciplined and silent, weapons ready, covering every exit. Sparks rained from the ceiling, smoke curling through the air, and the dragon, though restrained, roared in frustrated fury. Each movement of its massive body shook the floor, rattled consoles, and sent metal shards flying. Lyra's heart pounded, but her resolve was unshakable. This was the final confrontation, and she would see it through. The Council had tried to break her, tried to sacrifice her, and tried to bend the dragon to their will. None of it had worked. Captain Eric's voice came through the comms, steady and calm. Lyra, you have control. Secure the dragon. The Council is done for. Make sure nothing can threaten humans again. Lyra's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power, sealing corridors, and activating the final containment fields. Sparks hissed as the energy lines adjusted, feeding directly into the dragon's restraints. The massive creature struggled, smoke curling from its nostrils, flames sparking in its throat. But every movement was calculated now, controlled by Lyra's quick thinking and the humans' precise engineering. She had become the pivot upon which the Council's fate would turn. The Council members were gathered in the core chamber, pale, frantic, and powerless. They shouted, gestured, and screamed commands that no longer reached their targets. Their dragon, the symbol of their dominance, the weapon they had used to terrorize countless civilizations, was now trapped, frustrated, and dangerous only to them. Lyra's eyes scanned the chamber, noticing the smallest details, the weak points, the systems she could exploit. She did not hesitate. She activated the final lockdown, sending reinforced energy barriers along the corridors, cutting off every escape route. The Council screamed, their cries echoing against metal walls, powerless in the face of human strategy and courage. The dragon roared again, louder than ever, its fury reverberating through the ship. It twisted violently, smashing pillars and consoles, but the feedback loops held. Lyra had anticipated every move, every instinct of the beast. She pressed the final sequence, and the energy restraints pulsed with blinding light. The dragon's movements slowed, then froze, its massive wings folding against its body, smoke curling from nostrils, eyes glowing with restrained power. It was alive, yes, but no longer a threat to humans or to her. She felt a sharp thrill of triumph. The impossible had been achieved. A human girl, once a victim, had outsmarted a galactic empire's deadliest weapon. The humans moved in to secure the Council members. Some resisted, clawing and shouting, but the humans were relentless, disciplined, and precise. Lyra watched as the tallest Council member was restrained, his eyes wide with disbelief. How is this possible? He whispered, voice trembling. Lyra's gaze was steady, unwavering. Humans never underestimate the impossible, she replied, her voice calm but filled with quiet strength. Around her, the other Council members were captured, their authority shattered, their power gone. The dragon, their greatest weapon, had been neutralized by a single girl's courage and intelligence. The human fleet outside maintained pressure on the Council ship. Small attack craft hovered, ready to respond if the dragon regained control, but Lyra had ensured it could not. Explosions outside illuminated the darkness of space, fragments of Council ships drifting into the void. The Council had underestimated humans, had thought them weak, powerless, and easily intimidated. Lyra had proven them wrong. She had not only survived, they had lost control, and their empire would bear the consequences. Inside the central chamber, Lyra stepped closer to the dragon. It was massive, still breathing heavily, smoke curling from its mouth, eyes glowing faintly with intelligence. Despite its restrained state, she felt a strange connection, a sense that this creature had been manipulated, trapped in the council's twisted games. She reached out cautiously, hand trembling slightly. The dragon's head shifted toward her, nostrils flaring, smoke rising. It sniffed her, eyes narrowing, but there was no attack. Lyra realized something profound. The dragon had been a weapon, yes, but not inherently evil. It had been forced to obey, forced to kill, and now, finally, it was free from the council's control. The humans moved in to extract the captured council members. Lyra followed, walking past the restrained dragon, feeling its hot breath wash over her, yet sensing its understanding. Outside, their pods waited, engines humming quietly, ready to transport the prisoners and secure the ship. The dragon let out a low, rumbling sound, almost mournful, then shifted, lowering itself into a corner, passive but alive. Lyra allowed herself a faint smile. They had survived, they had triumphed, and a new balance had been established. The council's reign of fear and cruelty had ended. As they moved through the corridors, the remnants of the council's empire crumbled around them. Fires burned, sparks flew, and the smell of scorched metal filled the air. Lyra glanced at the humans around her, disciplined, focused, yet visibly relieved. Captain Eric's eyes met hers through the comms. "You did it, Lyra. We all did. Humanity has a place in this galaxy now, and no one can ever take that away." Lyra nodded, feeling exhaustion and pride wash over her. She had survived impossible odds, faced the council's deadliest weapon, and lived to see the victory of strategy, courage, and determination. The council ship began to drift in the void, systems failing, energy fading. Lyra stepped onto one of the human pods, watching the dragon one last time. It was alive, yes, dangerous still, but free from the twisted control of the council. She realized that freedom was not just survival, it was choice. The dragon would no longer be a weapon of fear. It had endured as she had endured, and now it had the chance to exist on its own terms. As the pods moved away, leaving the shattered council ship behind, Lyra looked out at the stars stretching infinitely before her. She thought of the humans who had fought alongside her, the courage it had taken to survive, and the message they had sent to the galaxy. Humans were not weak. They were clever, relentless, and resourceful. And sometimes even a single human could change the course of galactic history. The council had learned their lesson. And Lyra, once a victim, now a symbol of human strength, had survived to tell the story. The void outside was silent now, only the faint hum of the human pods breaking the darkness. Lyra leaned back, exhaustion finally catching up with her, yet her mind burned with determination. The council would recover in some ways, perhaps, but the galaxy had witnessed human ingenuity and courage. They had witnessed that a single girl could outsmart a dragon, defeat a council, and survive. And that knowledge would ripple across the stars, a warning to those who underestimated humanity. As the human fleet regrouped, Lyra allowed herself to close her eyes for a brief moment. She had survived. She had triumphed. And in the vast expanse of the galaxy, a new chapter was beginning. One where humans would be recognized, respected, and never again underestimated. The dragon's roar echoed faintly, a reminder of the chaos they had survived and the power they had faced. But now, for the first time, there was hope, and it was shining like a beacon across the stars.